All right, Emily, I'm excited to share your story today because I feel like we also have to share the meet cute of how we met. Because you're one of the actually, well, technically, some of the girls were in Florida, but you're the only one of our newest providers that I've had the opportunity to meet in person before working with you, which I absolutely love. So let's start there. How do you remember how we met?
Yeah. So in October, we both went to the Weight Inclusive Nutrition and Dietetics like fall conference. And I had followed you for a while and I was definitely fangirling over you. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and introduce myself, say hi.
You're so funny. How I remember it, I don't remember the fangirling, and that's funny that you even say that, but I do remember we were at the conference. We were in line for lunch. I was starving. And it was just, we were all standing there like chatting and, chatting about stuff. And then that's when you had shared that you knew what Fine Food Freedom was. I think you had shared with me you were from Wisconsin. We started talking about the Packers. Like there is like all the little caveats in there. And then you ended up sitting with our team, I think, whether it was at lunch and then the next day at the conference. And so I really feel like it was one of those meet cutes where it's like, oh, I was supposed to meet her for a reason. And that reason is now that you are a provider on the Fine Food Freedom team, which we're so pumped about. So, okay, let's talk all things you, personal, professional. I want to know what got you into the field of dietetics? Like, what brought you here into the field of nutrition and becoming a dietitian?
Yeah. So I think it was kind of that's a loaded answer. So originally I think I did what a lot of 18-year-olds do, and they're like, I don't know what I want to do for college, and take one semester and they're like, yep, this isn't for me. But at the time I was working in a hospital kitchen as well. So I was like, well, I'm good with managing those diets and figuring them out. Why not give that a shot and see if that's something that sticks? And then the other side of it is I was always in a larger body and was like, well, you can't not lose weight if you have all this education. So maybe that's the way of doing it, is getting all this education to lose this weight and be in a healthier body.
And when you say healthier, I'm just saying it because I know our listeners can't see us. She's using heavy air quotes when she's saying a healthier body. So, and I think a lot of people can relate to your story here. So I would love to hear from you. Okay, that's why you went into the field, right? But now you're working as a weight inclusive provider. The work that you do one-on-one with clients is rooted in the intuitive eating paradigm and health at every size and just weight inclusive principles. So what changed for you? Because I know for me, like I had very similar reasoning, although I don't reside in a larger body. I wanted to find this like secret answer to weight loss and help other people do it. And once I found what weight inclusive care was, what intuitive eating was, I was like, oh shit, this is like, I don't, this is the answer, that weight loss is not the answer. And I felt so unfulfilled by the work. I wanted to leave the field. So I want to hear from you. Like, did you ever have that kind of like aha moment, or was there ever like a really transformative time in your dietetics career that made you kind of hop over to weight inclusive care? I feel like I'm asking you 70 questions at once. So take that however you wish.
Yeah. I think so for me, I'm a pretty new dietitian. I say that and I've been a dietitian for 4 years, but it still feels pretty new. Um, but I remember a time when I was commuting to school, which is about 45 minutes, and I was checking out dietitian podcasts, and I'm like, okay, what's out there? And I found like Heather Kaplan's podcast. I found Aaron Glennis's podcast, and I'm like, huh, this is different than what I've been learning in school. Um, this It makes sense. I mean, I was listening to it and hearing about like intuitive eating and health at every size and weight inclusive care, and I was like, this makes sense. Even though we can make a puzzle of here's the ideal of calories and in and out and how it manipulates, and it never showed those long-term results. but addressing the person for who they were and what, what goes into that made a lot more sense to me. And I think from there, of just listening to it and going, okay, here's another like avenue I can go down. And it was almost like a domino effect where it was one thing after another of listening to podcasts and then reading books and then following people on social media and then doing my own, training and networking and attending different events, that I was like, this feels really good and I feel good with what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And I think I relate to you so deeply. I think that's how I started. It was through a few social media accounts. I think mine was Food Psych with Christy Harrison. I started listening to her podcast and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, and where has this been all my life? But okay, so that makes total sense. So as this shift was going on for you professionally,
Mm.
how was your relationship with food and body changing? And or we could kind of go back and ask a question before that. Have you always had a peaceful relationship with food or body? Or did you notice that as your beliefs were changing professionally, things were happening for you personally?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people who try intuitive eating, they attempt to do it for still getting that weight loss. And before I had learned about everything, that was something I was still trying to do, is lose weight, tracking calories in my fitness pal, exercising. I even dabbled into prescription weight loss medication.
Mhm.
And then once I kind of got to this, I was like, well, I could do both, even though you can't do both. I thought, oh, we could do both. And the more you know, that I was working with people and telling them not to, not to focus on weight loss, to really focus on their own health and, making those mindful choices, it eventually started to break down, that wall for me of, you're telling people to do one thing and you're still focused on this other thing of weight loss. So
Yes. Yes, that's like the beauty of our the work that we do, right? Is that it can help us kind of look from a bird's eye view of like, wait, I'm helping this person with this, and they're seeing this peaceful relationship with food and all these benefits, and why is it different for me? So I would love to hear from you with your own relationship with food. Like, let's stick specifically with food. What was that like for you from a very young age, like, or if you ever struggled with disordered eating, like when you were in your most, and I guess I don't even know the answer to that question. Like, if you have struggled with disordered eating at any phase, what was your relationship with food like when you were the most disordered? Like, if you could give us tactical examples of how you were with food, I would love for you to bring light to that.
yeah. So I think I just want to start by saying it's really hard to get diagnosed with an eating disorder when you're in a large body. Um,
Hmm.
because no matter which way you tend to fall, it's very, it's acceptable to do, anorexia behaviors, but it's also, willpower if it's more of binge eating behaviors.
Yep.
Um, I've never been formally diagnosed with an eating disorder. Um, I can see the criteria in myself, in my past versions, and even some, thoughts and habits that come up. Um, for me, I think I have like one specific memory of, really enjoying this pie from, there's a small cat, well, I guess it's not small, but there is like a chain that was in Wisconsin called Baker Square, and they had all these different pies. And I remember enjoying it so much and wanting to bring it home, but having that fear of this pie in my house, like in this the judgment of like my family and everything, that I actually kept it in my trunk and would like go out and have some. And I was
Mm.
probably in my early 20s because it felt so forbidden that I couldn't have it in the house. And so, of course, it's winter in Wisconsin and you can keep anything in your car overnight. So
A
I would
good
keep it
point.
there and have it, which works. I mean, keeping it in my car works really well if I'm heading out early in the morning with lunch, but keeping a pie in my trunk was probably, I think, the lowest point that I've ever experienced with my eating disorder, disordered eating habits.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think so many people can relate to that of this feeling of not being allowed to bring things into the home or feeling like you said in your example of feeling shame for family members or others seeing us eat something, or even if we live alone, just like if I bring this into the home, I will eat all of it. I will be out of control. I will air quotes be bad, etc.
Mhm.
Do you feel like you had morality tied to food? Were there any obsessive thoughts around food? Were there certain foods that were better, air quotes, from a moral standpoint than others? Or how did your relationship with food look like related to those kind of situations?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously a lot of the foods that I thought I was eating were maybe bad foods with quotes around them. Um, and that I didn't like a lot of the good foods. And I think as obviously as I learned more, knowing that neither of those were good or bad. And um, I even this weekend I went out for lunch and I was like, well, we're having fried pickles and technically they're cucumbers. So like anything can be a good food or a bad food, with quotations around it. It's all about
Exactly.
enjoying food the way it is for me.
Yes. Wait, I love fried pickles, and I feel like fried cheese and fried pickles you can find very frequently in the state of Wisconsin because I've been many times. Um, and that's like a perfect example of I wanted to shift that question now to what is your relationship with food like now? And that was such a perfect example that you gave of like going out and being able to enjoy fried pickles and being like, I'm enjoying this for exactly how it is. But as you've adopted the intuitive eating framework, as you've not only used it, of course, with session with your clients, but with yourself, how has your relationship with food changed and how has that impacted your life?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I don't think there's any morality over, the good or bad choices. Um, Honestly, for me, it's kind of led to a self-discovery of what feels the best, like what foods make me
Yes.
feel my best, what amount makes me feel my best, seeing I think this is more like the scientific part of being a dietitian is like what balance of like carbs and fat and protein feel the best? Like, do I feel better having a little more protein? Do I feel better having a little more fat at meals? And just seeing what makes me feel the best, both during a meal and after.
I love that. And I think that's such an important point because when I think about the biggest misconception about intuitive eating that I probably get online is that people think what our message at Find Food Freedom is saying is fuck it, eat everything all the time, period. End of story. And what you so beautifully just said is it once we drop that morality with food, we can actually start to listen to our bodies and see what feels pleasant physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that doesn't mean that those macro ranges will be the same at every single meal, right?
Mhm.
Every single day. But it gives us that opportunity to check in with ourselves and feel pleasant. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I absolutely love that. So when it comes to working with clients one on one, I know you've been doing that now, outside of before Find Food Freedom, and now you're working with clients at Find Food Freedom as well. What is your favorite part of working with clients one on one? Or like, what do you love about supporting clients? Like, when something happens in session, like, what's your favorite part about that one on one interaction with clients?
Honestly, I love my favorite thing is asking those tough questions of, where you go into a session and someone asks you really like personal challenging question. I love doing that because it helps that connection grow. Um, and a lot of times we don't ask each other those questions in day-to-day life. You don't ask someone, how did it feel that your body has maybe changed, now that we're practicing intuitive eating. You don't ask your neighbor that usually or your friend that unless they kind of open that door for you. And once that door is open, hearing the stories and trauma and experiences of others is something I don't want to say I enjoy hearing about, I enjoy being there to support them. I wish it didn't happen to them. Um, but knowing that I'm providing that support where they feel comfortable enough to share those experiences and trauma.
Absolutely. That was so beautifully said. And it kind of reminds me of something, I forget which talk it was at our weight inclusive and nutrition conference that you and I both went to. But when they're talking about how when someone is coming to counseling, right, they're looking for community. They're looking for support. Nowadays, if somebody wants to know how many calories are in something, right, or if a food is nutrient dense or not, they can go on ChatGPT or they can go on Google or whatever. Um, and although the root of the work that we do has nothing to do with calorie counts,
Mhm.
I think when I think about the work that we do as a team, and when we support clients, like how much community and rapport and such a safe space that we hold for clients, like that's exactly what I just kind of heard from you. And I think about the medical care that our team provides. And then I think about some of the medical care that I've received. And I'm seeing like you smirk, where I'm sure you're thinking of things in your own personal life where I'm like, what a better world this place would be if we all had fair, safe, unbiased, weight inclusive care with all of our providers, right? I'm not just talking about
Mhm.
dietitians. Um, and so yeah, I thank you so much for bringing that up because I think it's such an important thing. So when it comes to one-on-one clients, I know that you have a few different specialties that you kind of work with, but I would love for you to share with our audience who is, and I don't even like to use the word ideal clients because I know that we have so much variety in the clients that we see. There's so much nuance to nutrition, but when you're working with clients, who are the populations or the people that you serve most commonly, or the people that you really enjoy working with? And again, having that disclaimer that everybody is different and there's nuance to everything.
Yeah. So I do enjoy working with individuals in larger bodies. Um, Especially those with disordered eating habits and diagnosed eating disorders. Um, I also have quite an interest in PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Um, and then I really enjoy working with my neurodivergent friends, my neurospicy friends. Those are my favorites. So
I love when you said that in our Slack channel, the neuro spicy. I was like, I'm gonna steal that from her. I absolutely love that. And so I want to, especially because you just called it out now, how you said you really enjoy supporting people that reside in larger bodies that are struggling with whether it's disordered eating or eating disorder. And you said that earlier in the episode on What the Actual Fork podcast, we did an entire episode with Sharon Maxwell talking about how eating disorders are extremely common in all size bodies. And so I would love for you to speak directly to, like, if any of our listeners are residing in a larger body and they've been told to eat less, move more, that's going to fix and cure their medical diseases and conditions, right? They've, been struggling with restrictive dieting or whatever it is. What is a message you would want them to hear from you? Like if you're able to talk to specifically that population right now, what do you want them to hear?
yeah, I would say I hear you, and I'm sorry you had to experience that message from a healthcare provider without them digging further into what's actually going on. Um, and just to know that health conditions and, medical conditions can occur in any size body. And sometimes even if we try to shrink our body, they still stay there. And then we're kind of left with, oh, well, this is what we would have done originally had your body not been in the size it is.
Yes, I love that. That was extremely profound. Um, I always love to arm clients with, right, some of that advocating for themselves in medical sessions or, any type of provider session of, if I were in a smaller body, what would be your advice for me? If the doctor says to someone, right, you need to lose weight to fix this, or have you tried losing weight, or what diet have you tried, et cetera, et cetera. So I love how beautifully said that was and how simple that was put. All right. So, Emily, as we sign off today, and listeners, they listen to your episode, I hope they remember everything. But if they don't, because we know there's a lot of info on the web and on podcasts and all the things, what is a mantra that you love? Or is there anything related to food, to body, to like everything that we talked about today? If people could hear and remember one mantra from you, what is something that you want them to remember?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, I'm gonna steal it from one of my clients. I had one say last week, eat what you want, but also what you need. And I think that's a really good mantra, especially around intuitive eating.
Mm, so beautifully said.